Hello and welcome to Inside Tack with Bell Staff. I'm your host, Matt Cornwell. I'm the Racing Rules Advisor for INEOS Team UK. This is where we give you the live race reaction with the sailors who've been out there on the course today. And today we've got Leigh McMillan, very successful helmsman, now the flight controller for INEOS Team UK and Olympic gold medalist in rowing. But our grinder, Matt Gotrel. Leigh, first of all, a very different day today. How did you approach today differently, knowing that it's going to be so light? And how does that, when it's that light, how does that affect your role as the flight controller?
Yeah, I guess firstly, we knew we kind of had a few things to work on in the light conditions. So the priority was getting out and trying to find some wind where we could work on a few of our techniques and settings on the boat and make sure that we had made a few little steps forward, which went in a little bit of sailing that we did manage to get in, went really well. We did feel like we'd made some steps forward, and so we're able to kind of transfer that into the race. And, luckily we were the second race, so we got a chance to see the other teams go about the race and seeing what the conditions were like, and it obviously looked incredibly tricky. So I think that kind of really got us in the frame of mind that we just had to go into it completely open-minded and trying to find the pressure and really kind of almost think out the box in terms of your normal, in these type of boats, what your normal type of racing would be. It's like just kind of hitting more boundaries and keeping the boat absolutely at optimum performance. So
it's quite a funny setup, isn't it? When the other race is going on, we should explain to people at home, you actually have to sit in a holding pen. So you can't go off and sail and practice in that period. So you have to get that done first. But then you sit and you just watch the other race.
Exactly, yeah. So, we had to kind of make sure we had all of our training in before, well before the other guys were getting ready to start their race, and then we sat out, and it was quite a long race, so it was quite a lot of time for us sitting on the sidelines and watching them racing. But it does give you a chance to analyse the race course in advance. It's not, it's quite a nice kind of way of kind of figuring out how to go about your strategy as well. So it gives you a bit of time to figure that out, and I think in these conditions that was good for us. It was a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, nice pause. Matt, as a grinder, so people would normally think, and people watching at home would probably have thought that was a really easy race for you guys, but that's actually far from the case, isn't it? Although at times, I guess it's easy, but there's times it's actually still max heart rate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, I guess the best way to put it is a bit of like an all or nothing sort of race. Like you have moments where you're kind of sitting around waiting for wind and you're kind of just primed, ready to go, and then as soon as you kind of pull the trigger, it's kind of everything you've got. And especially in these boats, the transition from kind of not foiling displacement to getting up on the foils,
where everything's eased.
Yeah, I mean, you've got so much control over the sails, and then suddenly try and reduce all that drag. It requires everything you got, and I think it became, well, the lads did a great job of picking the moments, and you've kind of only really got one shot before you lose too much distance up the course. So I think all the lads on board knew that it was kind of that all or nothing moment for us, and we kind of gave everything every time we had the opportunity. So yeah, it was pretty tough, especially that last downwind when we were kind of manoeuvring our way down the left-hand side of the course as we were going downwind, and but you kind of didn't have anywhere to hide, so it was just time to put in and try and keep the boat on the foil as long as possible.
And the moments where you were pretty parked up at the top there, it was very light at the top of the course, wasn't it? And both boats were parking up there. But when you were parked there, and we'll look at some good clips in a minute, but you were parked and the Americans were foiling, how did that feel? Having done such a good job in the pre-start, how did that feel?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I guess, you kind of didn't do much about it at that point. Like, we all know that there was not much you can do when the wind drops below kind of 7 knots at times, and I saw on my display I was having 6 knots of wind, and kind of in that sort of position you just got to kind of sit there and hope that the lads at the back of the boat can put you in the right place to kind of get back on the foil again. They did a great job of that, so we were just kind of waiting and staying confident, knowing that our time would come, and kind of put the boat in the right place at the right time, and luckily we got around there in the end.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the comms certainly sounded like you were focused on your own boat, and it sounded fantastic. And great job. We've got 3 clips to look at. First of all, we'll look at the pre-start, because that's where the action really started. They made a bit of an error. We've got a clip up here which we'll watch. So they got a penalty on entry here, is that right?
Yeah, I think they were a little bit early, and obviously because it was so light, getting your time into the entry is really difficult. They were a bit early, tried to get slow, and they end up falling off the foil. We we had a bit of a decision to make. Do we actually engage them and try and really kind of mess them up? But because we were up and ripping and going fast, Ben made the call that we're better off just sailing our own pre-start, staying on the foils, finding the best bit of breeze, because even just getting a tack or a jibe in just to make it to the start line can be incredibly challenging in those conditions. So that was a really good call, because we managed to do that. We managed to find a good bit of breeze to do our circling and get back into the start, and kind of we were off on that beat. We made a good way up the beat before we fell into our first hole.
You guys were a long way ahead from where I was watching. Now we've got a clip. This is the first touchdown at the top mark. So having done such a good job in that pre-start and gotten a country mile ahead of them, you got to the top mark where it was very light. And we'll watch this clip here. This is where you first touched down. There you go, Matt. How did that feel right there?
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. I guess you saw it coming, and it's really tough to know that the guys behind you are just kind of saying the up to your transom, but you just kind of you got to just put your boat in the right position to try and look for the next bit of wind that's coming, really. And like I say, the guys at the back of the boat did a really good job of kind of keeping their heads out of the boat and not panicking at all. So yeah, it felt pretty calm on board. It looks pretty calm as well, because you won't get anywhere. But no, I think it's a tough one to know that they're just cruising up to you, but it's just part of the game, really. And you've got to kind of hope that you get the next one.
And Leigh, strategically, how important is it managing those light spots, avoiding them, getting through them, and how does that change your strategy throughout the race, the conversation on board, and when do you pick your moments to foil? What's the sort of key markers for that?
Well, the interesting one with that is because in a traditional boat, you're not trying to get on the foil generally. You're just putting the boat in the best breeze, on the best shift, and that's your strategy. But with these boats, because you need quite a long runway to actually get them up and rolling, the breeze comes in. It takes quite a lot of time to get the speed developed, because there's not a lot of riding moment initially at the low speeds, and so you get in the boat rolling, and so you need that distance. So Ben and Giles were constantly, they're almost putting us through a few holes to make sure that when we were lining up the next bit of breeze, which was going to be minutes down the line, we actually had the distance to get up on the foil and get it down and locked in to then start being able to do your manoeuvres. So that's kind of like an added complexity to the tactical situation, and knowing that you don't just want to hit the boundary because the breeze is there. You've got to get the thing on the foil as well. So and
then have time to jibe.
Time to get it all in. So,
jibe,
and on that last one, it was it was right on the limit. We just managed to get it done.
Well, it's good that you mentioned that, because we've got a great clip here too of that last run. And I don't know how much you guys knew about it here, but you were against the clock. You were a long way ahead of the Americans. Yeah. There's a 45-minute time limit for the race, and you had 10 minutes to finish this leg.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you can see how close we are to the boats there. It was absolutely touch and go. I was on the, on the flight control on the leeward side, so I was controlling that board, and just trying to get it onto the foil before we hit the boundary. With that puff that we got, it was right on the margin. It was, trying everything not to kind of add too much lift, because the more lift you add, when you're right on the marginal side of foiling, you're overpowering the sails, and if they trim on, then they stall. So you've got this horrible balancing act to trying to kind of tread this fine line of getting the thing up and foiling, and then once it actually gets up and releases and everything sheets on, you kind of get going. But it was, the whole time we're right on the boundary, so any angle up is going to kill us in kind of achieving that. So it was it was right on the limit, that one.
Well done, because that was the race right there. If you'd parked it there, that could well have been, we wouldn't have lost the race, but we would have had to resail it, which would be such a shame with a lead like that. Right, we've got some questions from people at home. Thank you guys for the questions. We really appreciate these. We love to know that you guys are there watching. First of all, we've got one from John Scott. Thank you. Why did you go so close to spectator fleet on that last downwind leg? Well, there we go. We just spoke about it.
Yeah, our boundaries kind of set right along the edge of the spectator fleet, so we were trying to use every little bit of water we could within our allocated boundary on the race course to get the boat up and foiling. So
every inch you can just to keep the thing foiling. That's really good. Question from Jeremy Bennett here. Thank you, Jeremy. This is definitely one for you, Matt. What is the maximum number of manoeuvres you can do in a race before your grinders collapse. Have you collapsed yet?
Not yet.
No?
Yet. I mean, the lads
Close?
have been talking about it the last few days as to kind of what would push us over the edge. I mean, that last kind of, I sort of stretched into the finish there today. The lighter winds are often harder just because you've got to move the sails through such a range of kind of controls and zones. And I think that last kind of 3 or 4 manoeuvres into the end there was pretty tough for the lads. But I think we're all under the impression that we can kind of take anything they can throw at us at the moment. So hopefully we can keep that going. But it's definitely tough out there, I know that, but when you know, like you say, coming into finish there, we knew it was an all or nothing moment to stay on the falls, otherwise you weren't going to make it to the line. So I think that added incentive meant
your head down.
We
now, as an Olympic rower, Olympic gold medalist rower, there's moments at the end of the race you've emptied the tank, and you know that's how you do it. You've got 2K to do, and then you're done. Does it get close to that in yacht racing too, in grinding on these boats?
Definitely. I mean, it helps if you know what's coming.
Yeah.
I think when you hear over the comms, you can kind of pace your race through the manoeuvres that are coming up, and say you might have one more manoeuvre left to the finish. You kind of know you can give everything to that one last manoeuvre to make sure it's as good as possible. But yeah, for sure, the races where, especially when you're close to other boats and stuff, the pressure ramps up, and you're always kind of on the edge and giving it all you can.
Yeah.
It is essentially a 25-minute time trial, so you have to pace it to the red line. If you go too early, you risk kind of not pulling off the perfect manoeuvre. And these boats, the margins are so small that you don't want to be the reason why you've fallen off the foils. Or
so you set your exhaustion for 25 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to be exhausted, but that's where you do it. Okay. Our grinders have their. This is from Sophie Galansinski. Thank you. Our grinders have their own pedestal facing outwards, and the other 2 boats, the grinders, share the pedestals. Why is that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's been looked into, but the other teams are kind of interested in it. And the biggest thing we have is that we're all able to grind forwards the whole time. So it means that kind of more efficiency in terms of the mechanics of actually grinding. But it also means that you can produce more power essentially as well. So we've offloaded some of the guys at the back of the boat and given them more freedom. Like Giles, for instance, can spend most of his time talking about racing, which is, like you say, on days like today and yesterday, has proved pretty important.
Very
important. Yeah, I mean, it's different for sure, but we like to think it's kind of helped us out and made us sail the boat the way we wanted to sail the boat, and it's worked out pretty well so far.
Great. It's almost like you're at a little bar there, but you're head down turning handles. Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to look at tomorrow's racing, the schedule. We've got one race tomorrow against Italy, and then it's we can sit the next one out, so we go out there and get that one done. The breeze is looking better tomorrow, isn't it? We just had a chat about that.
Yeah, breeze is back in, looking good. Should be fresh to finding.
Yeah, northerlies, isn't it? So a little choppier.
Yeah.
And let's have a look at, before we go anywhere, let's have a look at the scoreboard. Now, this means nothing. We have a long way to go in this event, but doesn't that look nice? Let's have a little look at it. There we go. Sitting on top, 3 wins, no losses. Lunar Race have 1, and our neighbours so far not having the event they won. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. It's always a pleasure to have you guys here when we've had a really good day, and excellent work in very, very testing conditions. Thank you everyone at home for joining in, for tuning in. Again, we always appreciate the support. Keep the questions coming. Tomorrow's another day which finishes this first section of racing until next weekend, all being well. And we look forward to that. Thank you.